All right, Hugh, welcome to the Sipping Point. I'm so excited to talk all things beer with you.
Oh, thanks, Laurie. I appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Well, we've known each other for a long time.
Yes, we have. Yes, we
Actually,
have.
I go back to the Sisson's pub days when I lived in Federal Hill, actually. So I actually did get to visit the brew pub and spend a good amount of money in there when I was living in Federal Hill. So
Thank you very
I know,
much.
of course, I know that's how everything started. And now you have Heavy Seas this
Hmm.
year awarded at the U.S. Beer Tasting Championships, the top IPA and the top Hazy IPA.
Yes.
So it's been an amazing journey. Maybe you could just, maybe in a nutshell, kind of tell us how you went from a family brew pub to one of the premier craft brewers in the country.
Uh, it's a whole lot of battle scars, really, more than anything else. It's so
Right.
we. I mean, you were familiar with the pub. The fun thing now is while I live in Delaware, I'm in Baltimore usually 3 days a week, and I have an apartment which is a block and a half away from where Sisson's used to be now. So
Oh,
I'm back
wow.
in the hood. Um,
Okay.
No, so I left Sissons at the end of '94. Opened Clipper City Brewing Company, which became Heavy Seas in '95. We literally just this past weekend completed 29 years of operations. So now we're actually in our 30th year.
Wow.
So it's been quite an honor and a privilege to have had a run this long. Made a
Yeah.
lot of really great beers, some of which sold great, some of which didn't sell at all, but that's all right.
Well, that's how you learn, I guess. At least that's what they say. You learn more from failure than from success. So I guess
Yeah,
along the way, you're gonna have a few duds to bring it all together. But
yeah,
I also know that you love wine as well,
uh
and
huh.
so that's we've of course judged wine competitions together, and I know you're a wine lover.
Hmm.
And but I started with beer. Is that how it was for you? You started as a beer lover and then transitioned into wine, or did you always love both?
Um, I probably started more as a beer fan. I was in the '70s. I was a college student that didn't like beer, and then I had the wonderful
Interesting.
opportunity to go and study in London in 1974 for 6 weeks, and I discovered there that I did like beer. I just didn't like the crap that we had at the fraternity parties. So, so that sort of was the beginning of the slippery slope, and then once we started operating the family restaurant Sissons, I've always been one of those people that thinks if you're in a business, you need to learn it. You need to be a student of your industry. So I started learning about wine and got very enthusiastic about wine and remain enthusiastic about wine to this day. Also, bourbon.
Love that. Also, I know that's big too. Okay, maybe
Yeah.
another conversation for us on another day. But I know I have three of your beers here from Heavy Seas that we're going to taste and talk about
Okay.
along the way. And I'm excited because I do enjoy beer, but I probably don't know as much about it as I should because I'm always diving into the world of wine, which is overwhelming as well, right? So
Sure.
I know we have three. We're going to start with the Bodacious Blonde. Love the
Hmm.
name. I guess in beer, you guys always have the fun, cheeky names. You know, wines are seem to be, more serious in label and in names. But tell us about the inspiration for
So
Bodacious.
so okay, as somebody who's been making uh, true local beer in the Baltimore metro area and the state of Maryland for many, many years. It always would frost my shorts when National Bow, which hasn't been made in Maryland forever, over 30 years now, still people think of it as the local beer. And it's not a local beer. And then
Right.
Guinness came in, uh, and I've got no malice for these folks. I mean, they're good people, but Guinness comes in and starts making a beer called Baltimore Blonde, and then shifts the production of it to New York. And when that
I
happened,
saw that.
my folks kind of said, "Wait a minute, this is ridiculous." So we came up with Bodacious Blonde, so we could have a real Maryland beer that
All
was
right.
celebrating the whole Maryland shtick, as you can see from the package design. The
Love it.
original name of it was B-O-H, dacious. But before we
Okay.
shipped the first case, we got a cease and desist letter from Pabst Brewing Company, who are the ones
Oh
that
boy.
own National Bow. So we
Okay.
said, screw it, we're going ahead. But we took the H off, and that's why there's an asterisk right there after bodacious.
Okay. There's the answer to all that.
Yeah. So
Perfect.
and we were shooting for something that we could put out at an attractive price point. I think this sells for, I don't know, $16 for a 12 pack or something like that. But yeah, and it's crushable. It's easy. I enjoy it.
So would you call it a session beer? Is that what crushable means?
Well, I think it's what, 4.25%, 4% alcohol, 4.5. Okay, so
Okay.
I mean, by our standard, that's relatively low alcohol. Yeah, you could call this a session beer. I don't know. I just call it a drinking beer.
I love that. Okay. Just want to make sure I'm getting all the beer terms down. Yeah, I love
Yep.
It's nice and light and
Yep.
crushable, quaffable, whatever you want to say, easy to drink.
Mm-hmm.
But there's flavor there. You know, a lot of the, and I won't mention any names because we'll probably get in trouble, but the light beers that people are drinking from some of the bigger
Right.
companies really just taste like carbonated water, if you
Yeah,
will.
they
I
don't
don't
taste like much.
find them at all interesting. This has flavor. So how do you accomplish that differently and still have this nice lighter, low alcohol beer?
Well, I mean, first off, you're using high quality malt, and the alcohol is lower because you're using less of it. So if you're going to use less grain in the mash bill, you better be using really nice grain in the mash bill.
Okay.
It's not an overly hoppy beer, so it's pretty clean. I just think it's eminently drinkable, and it gives you a little more to play with. I mean, this will be good either on your boat or as you're getting off the tennis court.
Okay. I like that.
So
Yeah. And does have like a little bit of that malty flavor on the finish
yep.
and on the nose, which is really nice. And I love the Baltimore branding, of course, because a lot of us are very proud of our flags and a lot of the different things around Maryland. I've been in Maryland now for 20 years, so I do think I maybe get an honorary
You do.
Maryland
You
status.
get a membership card now.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right. So the next two beers we're going to talk about are the winners from the U.S. Beer Tasting Championship. When did this take place? Were you there when the awards were given? How does that go down? Sounds
No,
like it's like the Emmys or something.
well, yes and no. I mean, the people who put this on, it's a nonprofit group. They've been doing it for, I don't know, 20 years, maybe longer.
Wow.
And they just solicit products from breweries all over the country. And the competitions are broken into several regionals. There's a Northeast, there's a Southeast, and I forget how many other categories there are. So they do 3 or 4 a year. So they have the summer beers, and then they have year-round products, IPAs, etc. So we've been sending them, and they don't charge anything, which is unusual. So this is literally people who are doing this just for the love of beer.
Wow.
So we've been entering these things for years, and this is not the first time we've gotten a Grand National Champion thing in a category. This was particularly gratifying, though, because American IPA and Hazy IPAs are probably two of the most important categories in beer these days. And so getting the top award in those two categories is sort of a real coup. But
absolutely.
You send them in. They have these independent panels. They then publish their regional results, and then the ones that win the regionals go into the national pile, and then they publish the national results. And they've been doing, like I said, they've been doing this for well over 20 years. So
that's great.
It's
and
the thing.
When did this IPA thing become so huge? Because it feels like it almost dominates the whole beer scene. Sometimes when you're at various different restaurants or bars, it seems to be all IPAs or hazy IPAs versus sort of a variety of styles. When did this become the craze that
IPA
it is. Yeah.
IPA has been the driving style in the category for probably almost 20 years now. I mean,
Wow, that long.
it's still, IPA is the category is still growing. I think it represents probably 60% of all craft beer is something of a variation on an IPA style.
Wow.
So yeah, it's I mean, it's still the driver, which is which has made the hop industry absolutely crazy because they're used to the large guys, the ABs and the Molson Coors of the world. I mean, they use hops and they use huge volumes of hops because their volumes are so big, but the amount of hops that they use per barrel of beer produced is minuscule. And then us little knuckleheads came along and started buying all of these hops, and so all of the hop growers put in lots and lots and lots of vines. And now that the industry is softening a little bit, they're kind of in panic mode, ripping vines out because it's just the economics are shifting.
Right. And what does it mean, an India Pale Ale? Just like if you don't know anything about beer, what makes that style? Is it the hops, the heavily hopped?
Well, it's so, and I think this is still largely true, but back in the day, the English were making pale ales, and the English had troops in India, and they would ship them pale ale. Unfortunately, pre Louis Pasteur and pre understanding of bacteria, etc., these things were being shipped in wooden barrels in the hold of wooden sailing ships with no refrigeration. And by the time the beer got there, it was for crap. So, so what somebody figured out was that if you raised the alcohol level and you put in a lot of hops were a bacterial retardant, and that style became known as an India Pale Ale. So if a brewery makes a pale ale and an IPA, the IPA will always be stronger and much hoppier than the other one. So that's where that story theoretically comes from. And it's been the dominant style for a long time.
And the grand champion here, we have the loose cannon. I hope you didn't name this after me. I know, obviously, Heavy Seas. You have the maritime theme going on, and the like sort of skull pirate theme. But where does the loose cannon come from? What was the inspiration on the name?
So, so the first name for this beer was supposed to be Three Sheets to the Wind, and
love it.
And I literally, as I was driving from Baltimore down to the beach, got a call from a small, they're not really a brewery, but somebody who owned a brand called Three Sheets to the Wind. And he got snarky with me about the trademark. And this is all happening while I'm in the car. And I hung up the call, and I have no idea why. But all of a sudden I said, screw it, I'm going to call it Loose Cannon. And that's how it happened.
Wow.
It's a brilliant name for a beer, especially one that's got 7% ABV. Now, the fun thing now is if you ever have a chance to come and visit the brewery tap room, we have two cannons on display at the tap room. I call them the Heavy Seas Loose Cannons. And so the story behind those is that the father of a friend of mine, while scuba diving in 1975 off the coast of Jamaica, found these cannons on the ocean floor and had them brought up. One of them is Spanish and dates back to the early 1700s, and one of them actually comes from the court of King George III, who was the king of England when we had the Revolutionary War. So there's my English loose cannon. So there's
I love it.
Those are very cool.
Lovely. Now, color-wise, all right, we can already see like we're into some deeper colors
here.
You're
into more of a pale amber color.
Yeah, and you definitely get some of those hops on the nose.
Oh yeah, the hops are. What makes this beer so popular, and I think why it works so well, is that it's really, really, really well balanced. You've got the aromatics on the hops. The 7.25% ABV was not. We didn't just say, "Oh, let's do that." We kind of built the beer around the hops so that there was enough malt skeletal structure in the middle, so that
Yeah.
it all balanced out and reached harmony. And it's got some nice bitterness in the finish.
Very nice, but not over the top, because
No.
there are some that are just, wow. Yeah,
Right.
that's really nice.
Yeah, I just wanted something that you could, sit back and have a couple of them and not get palate fatigue.
Right. And do you think of it the same way as we do in the wine business, as in if you're thinking about what you're going to eat? Do you think about what you're going to eat with which beer? Like this
Sometimes.
would be with heavier foods and bigger dishes than our bodacious blonde because of that flavor and bitterness.
I do. I mean, this beer does phenomenally well with sharp cheeses. Does really well with some spicier foods. This is good with Thai, for example.
Ooh, that sounds delicious.
So yeah. So I mean, you can play a lot with food and beer pairings. The Brewers Association, which is our national clearing board, if you will. I mean, they spent a lot of years trying to really promote beer and food pairing, and there are books out on it and all the rest of that stuff. I've kind of gotten to the point, maybe I'm just getting old. I just pick up what I feel like drinking and then what I feel like eating, and
right.
I don't pay that much attention to it anymore. I mean, clearly, if I'm going to have a really nice piece of beef, I'm going to go for either a dark beer or a red wine. I'm not saying I'm completely without scruples, but
you're not a heathen.
Well, my wife might argue that.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, and I do think that's one of the appeals of beer over wine. And it's a stereotype, of course, but just as that it's more fun and you don't have to think about it as hard. You don't have to know exactly where the hops were sourced from and what strain they are. And, so take the pressure off of people and just kind of, enjoy. But I think you probably still could have fun with events, with showing people how different pairings would be fabulous.
And, I mean,
I agree.
I've probably done 400 or 500 beer dinners in my career.
Wow.
So I have done a lot of, specific pairings of beers with food. And I've gotten pretty good at it at this stage.
I'm sure.
I just think the whole thing for me, and again, maybe this is just because I'm getting old. I don't want to work at it anymore. I just want to. I mean,
enjoy it.
Yeah. So, for example, I'm still doing the Cellar Notes program on wines for the radio stations in Baltimore.
Yep.
Sometimes, even though I've got a bunch of wines I'm supposed to taste for that, I'll go to the cellar and grab something that I'm not supposed to taste. And my wife will say, "Well, why are you doing that?" Because I don't want to work tonight. So I'll just open the cork and just enjoy it. I'm sure you have lots of moments like that when you're looking at stuff and you got to, it becomes work.
There's wine work when you're evaluating the wine, and then there's enjoying the wine and off the clock kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And tell folks, if they want to tune into your Cellar Notes, where can they check it out? Are you podcasting it? Is it on their website?
You can go to the wypr.org website and look up the Cellar Notes things, and all of the broadcasts are there. And I guess that's podcasting per se, but you can do all that. We're on 88.1 FM, and then we're that's WYPR in Baltimore. It's WYPO in Ocean City, and it's another. So there's a Frederick station, a Baltimore station, and then an Ocean City station.
Great, awesome.
Yeah,
you're expanding.
Been doing that for 31 years now.
Woo. Oh, really? And Al too, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I saw him yesterday.
Keep the duo together.
Yeah.
Love it. All right. Great. So we're going to get ready. We're going to taste the Hazy IPA. And I know this is a category, and I go to, we have a number of beer festivals here in town every year that I've been going to. And it seems like this category has really exploded as well, especially for people who maybe the IPAs are a little much, but they want something in between. Would that be a great way of, because I know a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't like IPAs, but I love hazy IPAs." So how does that all come together?
Well, it's an interesting approach. So if I'll hold this up, you can see It's definitely hazy. It's
Mm-hmm.
not, if you compare it to the loose Cannon, which is much more clear.
Right.
Anyway, so here's the story on hazies. Again, going back about 20 years, there was a bunch of small New England breweries who did not have the equipment to filter their beer. So they took what could have been a liability and turned it into an asset and got everybody to say, "Oh, isn't this cool drinking this unfiltered beer?" So now
Oh.
one of the upsides of not filtering beer is that all of the hop components, I mean, when you filter beer, by definition, it's a process of removal. So
Right.
when you don't filter the beer, all of the hop elements become very much more forward aromatically and softer and a little rounder on the palate because they've got all this other crap that's buffering them.
Okay.
Now, the problem with that is that is not a stable product. So you either had to get those super, super, super fresh. There was even one very famous one that used to put on the right on the can that you were supposed to drink it right from the can, so that they didn't want you to look and see how ugly it was. And
Ouch.
and uh, and the whole point there is that beer tastes very different even 3 weeks after it was packaged.
Oh, wow.
So the problem became, when you're on a commercial scale like we are, is I can't put unfiltered sediment dropping beer into a package and expect it to have any shelf life at all. So the Sierra Nevadas and the Heavy Seas and a whole bunch of, we all had to figure out a way to do this without just not filtering the beer.
Right.
So we developed a whole different approach to producing these products to get that effect. And yet it won't sediment out in the bottle. And we still got those very soft floral aromatics
I was
in
just
the
going to
nose.
say very floral on the nose.
Yep.
And fruity.
Yep. Very
Yeah,
very floral, very fruity. It seems softer and rounder on the palate than the loose Cannon.
it does. Mm. And
A lot of citrus on that.
yeah, citrusy. So wheat beers versus hazy IPAs.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference? Is it the hopping?
That's a good question. So some of the classic German style wheat beers, the Hefeweizens,
Right.
they're not filtered, and they
Yeah.
will throw a sediment in the bottom of the bottle. But
Right.
you're not dealing. I mean, those are very delicate beers, and they use a sort of a funky yeast, which gives the product a sort of a clovey flavor, spicy flavor.
Right. Or banana and bubble gum or something. Was a thing. Yep.
That all comes from, well, that's because they're ales, and that's from the esters that are produced using an ale fermentation. But yeah, so this is a completely different. It's still an IPA. It's totally different from loose Cannon, and I really like this one. I think it's terrific.
I do too. And is it proprietary what you're doing to achieve this?
No,
And
I
not
don't
having
think
to
so.
filter? And so how do you do that but still keep it shelf stable?
Well, it does get filtered.
It does get a little okay, but you still retain the flavors
Right.
and the
Well, that's the technique that my brewmaster Chris Leonard has developed. So
okay, all right.
he's a smart feller.
You'd tell me, but you'd have to kill me.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah,
As long as you didn't tell anybody, that'd be fine. But no,
that's
it's really
true.
good.
So good.
Yeah.
So obviously we tasted the blonde, the
Mm-hmm.
IPA, and then the hazy Cannon hazy
Right.
IPA.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see, since we're getting ready to go into a new year here, where do you see, are there any styles that we haven't talked about that you think are going to be the next big thing in craft beers, or any, new weird stuff that you're working on?
I expect IPAs to still dominate the category. So we've got the loose and the hazy, and then we have a citrus IPA, and then we have a double IPA, and then we've got this whole new series that we're bringing out now called the Lost Navigator, which are 9.5% double IPAs. Yeah,
Wow.
those are beers with true testicular fortitude. Um, but they are. So I still think the IPA category is there. There's a lot of people who are talking about, light American lager is making a comeback. I answered that with a big maybe. I just don't see it. We can't. Uh, I mean the collective we of us craft brewers. We just don't have the economies of scale, and the American
Yes.
consumer probably isn't. I mean, if that's the style of beer that they want, why wouldn't they buy Budweiser or Miller or whatever at a
Right.
much better price point? So
Mm-hmm.
I question whether that's going to come back. I think things like the gold, et cetera, maybe or the blonde ale, they may pose better opportunities overall.
Okay.
One of the things that we're doing is that we're now branching into soft drinks. I don't know if you've ever remembered the Dominion root beer.
Oh, interesting.
We're
Okay.
now producing this under license, and we're developing a ginger beer to go along with it,
Great.
just to diversify what we do. And you saw a lot of breweries that got involved in the RTDs, the cocktails in the cans.
Right.
I mean, Dogfish has done a lot of that. So I think our industry is clearly in the process of contracting a little bit, and I think you're going to see a lot of consolidation over the next couple of years. And I think we're going to probably have to go through a little bit of a Darwinian correction overall, and then I think you're going to begin to start seeing the creative juices coming back. But anyway, that's where it's going. I mean, it's cannabis has had an effect on the industry. Gen Z has had effect on the industry, and I think the overall economy's had an effect on the industry. So
Yeah. Wine
yeah.
too, probably.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I see the wine numbers.
Story. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and even spirits are down now. So
Wow.
this too shall pass.
Where are all these sober people? I want to know. I don't know any of them. Just kidding. So just one last question, and we appreciate so much sharing your time and information here. I feel like I know so much more about beer, and I appreciate that. If you could just have one wine, they said one more wine, that's it. That's the last wine you'll ever have. What would be your choice? What is your? I often talk about Barolo because, as I say, it's my death row wine. If I was only given one more wine before I go, what is your OMG wine?
My OMG wine.
I know it's hard to pick.
Probably a really Class A Chianti Classico.
Oh, I like that. I'm an Italian Reds. You had me at Italian Reds, but they're so much better quality now. People don't always think of Chianti Classico because of their old notions of what Chianti used to be. But there's so much great wine now as well.
There's one that's produced by Antinori called Badia Passignano. Have you ever had that one?
I don't think so.
It's a property literally a mile further down the road from Tignanello.
Okay.
And it's just straight Chianti Classico, and it's unbelievable.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. That and a good bistecca Fiorentina.
I'm searching that out. Well, Hugh Sisson, if folks want to check out Heavy Seas Beer or come visit you at the tasting room, where should they go to find out all things Heavy Seas?
www.hsbeer.com, heavyseasbeer.com. It's all right there.
And if you go, tell them the wine coach sent you. And I know they'll take great care of you and get to see those two cannons. So that's inspiring me to get back to the brewery as well. So
the cannons are really cool. When you see the King George III insignia on the cannon, it's way cool.
That's very cool. Well, Hugh Sisson, thank you so much. Cheers. We really appreciate you coming on The Sipping Point.
My pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.